Hi, folks. Happy Spooky Sunday. I'm back for another story. I hope you're all surviving the quarantine. It's been several weeks now that we've been doing this. I think this is the fourth Sunday. And I hope you're all well and taking care of yourselves and being kind to the people you're with. And if you're by yourself, I hope you're being kind to yourself and know that we're connected out here, even if we are not in the same place. So tonight, I'm going to tell you a story. Hold on a second. I think I'm going to try to... I'm not going to worry about that. Anyway, tonight I'm going to tell you a story that I'm going to call The Grandmother. Now, sometimes people ask me for help with spirits who have things that they need to deal with. Sometimes I go to a place, to a house that has something there, or I'm at the school and there's someone there that recognizes me. But one time I didn't even stop at a place, and a spirit reached out to me, a grandmother spirit, in a big way. And this is her story, and this is the story, of that encounter. So this happened, it was in the fall, the full moon in like early October, because it was a little bit chilly. The twins had just been born in the summer, and we were all going out to the Manistee Forest to build a little campfire and have a dinner picnic. It was the first time getting out in the woods with the twins. They were in those little front packs, and we were going to drive out and find a little spot that Ezra knew by a creek out there, and have a picnic and just be out in the beautiful fall colors. And the colors were just so gorgeous at that time. It was like peak color, so it must have been early October. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Well, that doesn't matter so much. But at that time, Zach and Jesse and Layla were still living out on 5 Mile Farm, and they were wanting to find a place of their own. So they were in search of a house to buy. And so when I would drive around, they wanted to be out in the country. So when I was out of town in the country, I would look for sale signs. So on our way out to the campfire, we took the back roads, and we were kind of winding around, and saw one house, and it was like this little ranch house, and it was just at the edge of the woods, and I thought, oh, that'd be a really nice place. And so I said, Buns, jot down the number there. And then we saw another for sale sign, and so we took note of that to send him over to look at them. And then as we were driving down this long stretch of dirt road, up ahead I could see a for sale sign out near the road. And as we were getting close to it, it was a brick house, a tall brick house like that, missionary style house, very plain, just old, it looked like it had been built probably 100 years ago or something like that. But this old brick house, beautiful looking building in a field with a big pine plantation behind it. And I saw the sign and went, oh, wow. And then as we got close, I felt this energy just draw me to it. And it was this powerful, ferocious energy. And it was, I'm telling you, it was like this. And I said, not this one. And we kept driving. And Bunsey said to me, why not that one? And I said, that's got something going on there. There is something big time going on at that place. So keep driving. So we headed out, and we had our picnic. And then when we were coming back, it was getting towards sunset. And at the full moon, the moon rises as the sun sets, And it was this beautiful, clear night. And as the moon rose, we were driving, and we were in a lot of pines and stuff. And I said, go back out to the big straight road where we can get some deciduous trees. It would be really cool to get a picture of the moon rising over the changing forest. I'd like to try to get that. So he's driving, and I'm looking through my camera viewfinder, which is my phone, basically, my phone screen, to try to get a shot, and I'm leaning out the window, and I'm looking to see, where is going to be something. And it's pines, field. And then all of a sudden, there's this beautiful big, I don't know if it was maple or what, but it was like a fully leafed tree with, where the red and the gold tipped leaves. It was so beautiful. And the moon was rising over it, and the moon was catching on the tree. And it was just gorgeous. And I said, stop here. I want to get out and get this picture. So he stopped the car. And I got out, still looking through my camera, not looking at the world around me. He stayed in the car. He was driving. And I took a couple of shots of the tree. And then he rolls down my window, or it was rolled down, or his window or something. And he says, hey, T.I., turn on your ghost detector. And I said, what? Why? And he said, look across the road. And I turned and looked, and there was that house. I had called us to a halt right in front of the house. It was like, yeah, not here. And I was so busy looking at the moon and the tree that I was kind of ambushed, I think. So ghost radar has words and things on it, and I turned it on, and immediately it just lit up like crazy and started word after word after word after word after word. And if it does that to warm up, and then when it gets to the dark colored words, those are supposed to be, it's an app. I don't know if it's actually credible in any way possible, but what was interesting was the first word that came up twice in a row was photograph, and then house. And so I said, okay, back up. And we looked, and now it's full dark. Okay, the moon's up, the sun is fully set. It's full dark, but it's not pitch dark because it's a full moon. He could pretty much see pretty well. And I noticed that there was like a driveway into it, and there's nobody else around. There's nothing around. So I said, just back up and pull into the driveway, and I'll just take a picture of the house. And as soon as we pulled in, I just got this heaviness in my chest, this like, this like pushing on my chest, like two hands just pushing on my chest, just firm pressure. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this photograph and we're going to get out of here. So I got out of the car and I said, keep it running, stay there, but turn off the lights. So he turned off the car lights. I went in front of the car. And I was looking, now I was not looking in my camera, in my phone, because I wanted to be aware of everything around me because that place was charged. And I was looking at the house and up in the windows, the blackened windows, expecting to see something in the windows. But I didn't, and I just click, 3 pictures, and they go down to the thing, and Bunce opens his window, and he says, T.I., look at those pictures you just took. And I went, why? He said, maybe your finger's in front of it or something. Look at those pictures. So I went back to them, and it was alarming what I saw. Because, first of all, I went back, and there were pictures that I had taken of the moon and the trees where there was nothing on it. Okay, there were no anomalies, no light anomalies, nothing. Like there was something, my screen can get pretty greasy. You've seen those pictures, right, Rachel? But there was nothing on the screen. Those were crystal clear. And then the first picture of the house had what looked like a tube of light coming up in front of me. And the second one had the tube of light that was turned and appearing to move, like starting to face toward me. And then the third one had that thing of light that was like twisted, and it was literally, you could see it was a tube, an illuminated tube of some kind. I have no idea what that was. So I thought, something's on the lens or something, or maybe I'm too close to the car and I'm getting in a reflection from the car hood or something. So I took 3 or 4 steps forward and I wiped off, on my my sweater, I wiped off the lens and blew it. And then I held it up again, and I looked around me, and I click, click, and the third click had what looked like this tube was now right in front of like my camera lens. And I was like, whoa, 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 this is way too much energy. I'm leaving. We're leaving here. I'm not going to stay here tonight in the dark. So I got back in the car. I turned off my phone. I said, back out, and I backed from that place. Now, when I'm faced with energies that have attracted me, I find that if I back away from them, that I can keep them there. And I said, stay here. Don't come with me, because I felt this enormous attachment by whatever energy was in that place, just this powerful attachment. And I said, stay here. Don't follow. And I kept my hands up, and I got in the car, and he backed out, and I kept my hands up, so we were backing out. And as we started to pull away, I turned my body, and I pushed it away. And as soon as I turned back around, I felt like it was right there. It had not listened to me. It was right there. And Bunce could feel it in the car. He says, oh my God, what did you bring with? And I said, I don't know what this is, but this is not okay. This is not good at all. So we got back to the house, and I could still feel it. So I took a picture just in my front yard, and there was a faint shaft of light in a different place on this camera, on the picture, but there was like a shaft of light coming this way, and then the next one had another one. And I said, okay, I'm not going in the house yet. And I put the phone down, and we had a bunch of sage growing in the backyard, and I can't get down the hill there, so I sent Bunce and Ezra to go grab handfuls of sage. And I took handfuls of sage, and I rubbed handfuls of sage, and I pushed it away on the ramp, and I put it on the ramp, and I did not light it. I just put it there. When you lighted it for me, it's like a peaceful, welcoming thing. This was a get the bleep back is what this was. And I went and I had him bring out some salt, and we put some sea salt at the doorway, and I felt it gone. And I took another picture from exactly the same angle. This was probably 5 minutes later, and there was no light anomaly on it. None at all. And I have not had that happen since. I sent photos to friends of mine who are photographers and asked them if they had seen anything like that, what could possibly cause that, and showed them the timestamp was on each of those photos. And the difference between the one of the tree and the moon, and then the one at the house, and then the one at my house with the light anomaly, and then without the light anomaly, was minutes, just minutes. And so it's there, it's gone, it's there, it's gone. And it was just very odd. And I showed them to other people too. I showed them to like Era, and said, she says, don't leave that on your phone. Said, don't have that near your bed. Just don't attract that. I just have a bad feeling about that. And I said, okay, well, fine. But I didn't do that. And I felt it still connected to me. I did not feel it attached to me, but I felt a real connection to it. And then later, this was like this lasted for years, where if you drove by, it's like the back road to Coyote Crossing, you could pass this house. So sometimes we'd take the back road, I would still feel the thing there, and I'm like, okay, I know you're there. And then Zach got a place out near there, and so we would drive by there from time to time. And finally, it was like more than a year later, I just kept feeling like there was something that I needed to find out. There was something, somebody was really, really, really asking me for some help. And so we went there. Era was in town, and we went out in the daytime, And we just were walking around. It had a for sale sign, so we didn't like break in like some people did at some point to out in the state hospital, but that's another story. We were just walking around looking at the property, and around back there was a cellar door, and when I got by that cellar door, I felt this retching nausea by the back cellar door, and I'm like, oh my God, something happened in that basement. And Eric's like, yeah, there is something going on here. And we just kind of walked around it and didn't take any pictures. And it's like something's happening here. But I didn't know what it was. So then I started to let that energy tell me what was going on. I said, okay, what is it? I was like drawn to the place. I was like, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I would dream about it. I would think about it at weird times. It was just strange. I was like obsessing over this place, and I didn't know why. And I knew there was something that somebody wanted me to know, or something important there. So I went by there, and I didn't go on the property. I stayed in my car, and I just stopped, and I said, okay, go ahead and let me know what's going on. And I saw a grandmother. And this was a Native American grandmother. She had a round face. She was missing teeth. She was so angry. Her hair was like wild angry. And I kept hearing from her. And she was not giving me a memory. This was very unusual, because usually when, as I've said before, when a ghost wants me to know their story, I get a memory. But these are always memories of them when they were living. And this grandmother was appealing to me. She was calling me grandmother. And she kept saying, grandson, grandson. And I was like, what? What happened to your grandson? What? Is this your grandson's place? Is what grandson? And then fade. It was really difficult to communicate with her through her fury. She was furious. So time went on, and I was getting snippets. I was seeing her grandson, a boy of about 12, and I was seeing him standing by that cellar door, and then it would be gone, and then I would see her again, and then I had a friend who came by, who lived in Chicago and was staying here, was going up to Traverse or something, spent the night here, had some business up in Traverse City, and she slept upstairs in the little room that used to be Rachel's room. And in the morning she said, whoa, who is the grandmother up in that room? And I was like, oh, that used to be Rachel's room. Maybe it's Granny Leela, or maybe Grandma G, or somebody like that. She says, boy, she is pissed. And I went, oh, that grandmother. Yeah, that grandmother. So then I went to work, and I started trying to find out about the place. I started trying to find out who lived there, and did something happen with some Native American people there at some time, and whose place had it been? And I asked Bunce to ask around, and we talked to a friend who'd lived here forever, and he knew somebody who had lived there as a child. And I won't say the name of them, but he had lived there as a child, and when he said the name, I had this flash of, holy crap, that's a connection. That's an important connection. And then I started dreaming this stuff. So this is not dreams like the weird subconscious dream I had the other night. These are meaningful dreams that I wake up immediately from and know that I've been given information. Have you ever had anything like that? Yeah, so, okay, so here's what I saw. This grandmother, I saw her. I'm closing my eyes because I can picture it. I saw her standing with 3 children, a boy of about 12 and then 2 younger children. And they were standing in a kitchen, and she was standing by them but away from them. And there were 2 other adults there, and it was the preacher and his wife. And these 3 children were Native American children. Now, this was not like the 1900s. This was not 1930s or 40s. Everybody was dressed like 1960 something. It was modern times. This was recent history. And I was wondering why these children were there with this preacher and his wife, and this grandmother just standing off in the corner watching. And then I realized that they had been taken. They had been, this is something that happened and happens, that children, Native American children, were often fostered out under the guise of helping them escape poverty. They were taken from their families. And I kept seeing the place when they were taken. These were 3 siblings that were taken from a mother. And I saw them taken. This was heart-wrenching for me. I could watch the whole thing. It was like I was looking through the grandmother's eyes. Suddenly I saw what she was seeing, but when they were taken from their mother, she was already a spirit. She was no longer alive. And she told her daughter, tried to let her daughter know she would go with them and protect them in spirit. So this grandmother ghost had gone with her children to this foster home outside of Hoxeyville, west of Cadillac, in the middle of nowhere, to a preacher's house with a preacher and his wife, a young couple. And they were very strict, and they were very stern, and they were very like uber Christian, like pray all the time and on your knees and trying to, save the souls of these poor, wretched Odawa children. Oh, God. So these children had lived in poverty with their mother, but now they lived in emotional poverty. And they were surviving. And they all were in the same room. They slept in the same room. And the preacher's wife was cleaning up and found a bunch of food under one of the beds. And it was one of the little ones' beds. Now, what was happening is when you've spent time hungry, people will hide food and hoard food. And this little one, probably 5, maybe 6, was hiding food in his shirt or pocket and then putting it under the bed so if he was hungry later, he would have something to eat. So anyway, the preacher's wife, and that's all I heard, preacher's wife and preacher, found the food and became furious. We're going to have rats. You can't put food under here. You can't. And the older boy, I did not learn his name. I wish I had learned his name before she left because, anyway, I'll tell you that at the end. But what happened, and I'm watching the grandmother watch all this, okay? So the older boy says, I did that to protect the little ones. And she said, you should know better. I'm telling the preacher. And the little ones were just terrified, and he was like, yeah, up yours. He was, the grandmother kept telling me warrior. He was a warrior. He was going to protect those little ones no matter what. So they went downstairs, and he was not allowed to come down for dinner. And after dinner, the preacher called him down. Everybody else was sent to bed. And he told him he was going to teach him a lesson to be obedient and not be gluttonous and not be, I don't know what else, but he was going to teach him a lesson. And he took this boy down to the cellar after everyone else was upstairs. And he had a rod, like a, like those wooden pointers that teachers had back in the olden days. It wasn't thick. It was like a thin pointer rod. It was like a thin dowel, but it wasn't one thickness all the way through. It was thinner at one end than the other. And he first, this is so horrendous to see this. And the grandmother is watching this. Meanwhile, the grandmother is trying to stop this. The grandmother ghost is pushing her energy and trying to get in between the preacher and her grandson. And the first thing he does is he puts his hand on his head and pushes his head down and prays and says, pray and ask forgiveness, pray and ask forgiveness. And the boy didn't say anything. And so he took the rod and he whacked him. And then he said, on your knees. And the boy got down on his knees. And he said, pray for forgiveness. And the boy said nothing. And not only did he say nothing, he looked him right in the eye. And the grandmother is trying to push her energy in between this, trying to grab the arm of the preacher as he whacked that boy over and over on his backside and on his back. And he said, you stay down here tonight, and I'll come get you in the morning and see. And you pray. You stay down here tonight and ask the good Lord for forgiveness. And I'll come in the morning and we'll pray together. And he went upstairs and left this boy down there. Now, the grandmother wrapped herself around this boy who was now curled up on the floor of this cellar. And what had happened, it was not intentional. I'm starting to shake here. It was not intentional. But when the preacher hit him just so, he hit like his kidney or something, and he caused some kind of internal bleeding. And so this little boy on the floor of the basement all night, he lay there and bled into his own body until his spirit joined his grandmother's spirit. And I saw her lift him out, and I saw her lift him away. And then I saw the ferocity that I had seen, and I saw her stand over that body. Before anyone else woke up the next day, the preacher went down. He was feeling kind of remorseful. He thought maybe he had beaten the boy in frustration and maybe had beaten him a little too hard. And he went down into the cellar and saw that the boy was dead. He fell to his knees and he started to weep and he started to pray. And the grandmother was having none of it. The grandmother was putting her face right in his face, putting her face right there where and he couldn't see her. All he could see was his own shame and his own terror. He had murdered a child. So what was he going to do? Well, there's only one thing you can do. He picked up the boy. There was no blood. Everything was internal. There was no sign of him. He took this little body while everyone was still asleep, and he carried it back to the back field, the place where the pines are planted now. And he went back in the field, and he left it there, just out on the field, and walked back to the house. And then in the kitchen, his wife was in the kitchen, and the two younger ones were in the kitchen. And he said, I was just out walking and speaking to the Lord, and I'll go down and bring the boy up. And he went down to the basement, knowing full well there was no one there. Oh, he had left the cellar door open when he took the body out. And he called to his wife, and he said, he's gone. He's run away. He's gone. He's not here. He must have run away. And the other two children just grabbed onto each other, and tears started just coming down their faces. And you can imagine what the grandmother thought about this. She was spinning. She was literally, it was like a cyclone of fury in that house. And she was spinning around that man. Can you imagine her frustration, where you would have to watch this and not be able to affect it at all, not be able to do anything to protect, when you vowed to protect your grandchildren and not be able to protect them, and then to have him say that he ran away. And so they called the authorities. He said, well, maybe he'll come back. First of all, he said, maybe he'll come back. And left it that day and didn't do anything that day, figuring that maybe he just ran off into the woods to get away, is what he told his wife. And he'll be back. And then that night, he went out with a shovel and buried the body, and left him there. And he didn't come back. And so after a few days, they called the authorities. And those two little children are probably alive now. They're probably my age, a little younger maybe. And they still think that their big brother ran off and left them there. But they did not stay for long. They were removed from there. The preacher and his wife didn't want to foster children anymore. They had tried to have their own children and were not able to have children, and they decided not to foster children anymore, so they were there. But he had a change of heart, the preacher did, and he quit preaching. He quit the church that he was preaching at, and he never preached again. And then I saw that grandmother, and she's trying to tell me this guy's name, and the preacher, was still alive when she was telling me this, and she was mouthing a name, and I couldn't hear it. And she was saying a name, and I was just getting pieces of it. And I had a part of it. And so I said to Buns, ask your friend what the name of the family is that lived there, and if his father was a preacher. And sure enough, it was the name. As soon as he said it, it was clear as a bell. That's who it was. And what we found out was that this man who we knew peripherally, whose father was the preacher, had been a preacher. This is what he told us, that he was a preacher a long time ago, but for some reason he quit the ministry, and then he did something else, and he ended up being like a township supervisor, and he was or something like that, or on a township board or something. He was very well known and thought highly of in the community. And while this was all going on, he was still alive, but he had dementia. And he had what we found out was he had extreme paranoia and terrors, and they kept sedating him because he would fly off in panics. And I was seeing this grandmother haunted this man every day of his life. When he started getting dementia, he could start seeing her, and she was there, and she was showing him day after day after day what he did to her grandson. And this furious grandmother just, oh boy, I sure wouldn't have wanted to been him. I would not want to have closed my eyes and been dreaming the dreams he must have been dreaming. So when we had the name and knew who it was, I sat down at my altar and I spoke to her. Turns out, well, this is before he passed away, and I spoke to her and I said, "Grandmother, your fury is keeping you here. He's a dying old man, and he has been in his hell his whole life and will probably continue to be there because of what he did to your grandchild. Your fury has created yours. Your grandson is gone. Go find your ancestors. Go be with your ancestors. There's no need for you to be here anymore. This upstanding citizen, I know what he did. I know that story. And I will honor your grandson, and I will not honor the murderer of your grandson." And this wild grandmother woman with this just crazy hair all of a sudden changed and softened. And her hair just smoothed down. Her eyes softened. And she reached her hands out, and I felt like what I had felt when she first tried to get my attention, that push on my chest. Only it wasn't an aggressive push. It was a push into my chest as she got closer to my face. And she said, "Thank you, grandmother." And then she went, phew, and she was gone. Now, for those years, and this was over years. I've only taken about 40 minutes to tell it, but this story actually takes place over several years. And in that time, that house would sell. You could see that there were cars there. The sign was down, and some kind of remodeling would start. And then the next year, bam, it was another for sale sign there. 3-4 years in a row, I think it was for sale 4 or 5 times. And ever since, the grandmother found peace and had nobody here to haunt any longer. It's been sold, and there's been the same family there now for a few years. And every time I drive by, I honor the grave of that boy, that warrior, that young warrior who protected his younger ones. And I thank him, and I thank his grandmother. And I just say a little prayer that they're together and that they can find peace. You know, not all evil that is done intentionally. Taking those children away from their family was, quote unquote, a good deed, trying to help them. But when your intentions are couched in your own small thinking, in your own entitled way of looking at things, even the preacher, "I'm going to save this boy. I am going to bring him to Jesus and save his soul. And in doing that, he lost his own. We need to be mindful to honor each other, honor our differences, honor the rights of every single person to live their life the way that their culture and that their community intends. We need to help one another and support one another and not just rip families apart and force our own thinking on others. We need to just stop it. Just stop it. Or I'll be that ferocious grandmother someday. So love one another. Be kind. This has been a shorter one tonight. This has been an exhausting one tonight. I've told you 2 very disturbing stories in a row, couched in racism. You know, it's so it's so pervasive in our society. We could see it. We could see it everywhere. And so many of these stories are there. I wonder how many other big brothers were thought to have run away. I wonder how many other grandmothers tried with all their power and heart to protect their living children and grandchildren, only to be thwarted and grow furious. Protect each other, take care of each other. So that's my story, the grandmother. Gotta take a breath and a drink. I think I'll just stop here. I know Rachel said to tell more, but I don't think I could tell another story tonight. Let's all, for just a second before I go, okay? If you think for just a minute of every child and every grandmother who's lost their child and every mother, and let's just for 1 minute or 30 seconds, let's just send some unconditional love out there to all those who suffer, including the preacher. Because the only way toward peace is through understanding and forgiveness. So I'm going to just be quiet for about 30 seconds, and I'm going to send that love. Do that with me, will you? Every time you put love into the world, it makes it better, no matter how cruel it is. Every time you put love into the world, it makes it better. Good night, everybody. I love you all. I really do. And I'll see you next Sunday. Bye.